So a guy like Anderson, like you mentioned, how you typically look at their training progression and their skill acquisition and their power throughout their career to kind of as a reflection of if they're suspect or not, rather than just do they have acne, do they have hair loss, do they have gynecomastia, etc. So for a guy like Anderson who was popped multiple times, like on the latter half of his career, rather than in his like pinnacle of smoking dudes in like dramatic fashion,
Yeah.
do you think his progression is reflective of being on like the whole time? One of the main questions too, and this sort of came up in that interview the other day, is he mentioned how the Anderson Silva super fight when they were in their prime never happened, partly because UFC did not have strong drug testing procedures at the time. Is that, like, I can understand why somebody would say that, given that Anderson's popped multiple times now, so maybe that was a smart move to never actually do that. But like, is that, do you think that was the primary motivation, like when you guys talked about it?
Here's the thing: everybody thinks everybody's on steroids. Everybody thinks so. For sure, we want testing. For sure, we wanted testing, and there's a lot of discussions behind closed doors. Okay, do you guys want to fight? Okay, here's our list of demands for the fight, and they have their list of demands, and one of them for sure was drug testing. George always wants to drug test his opponent. He got to the point where he wanted to drug test everybody, and that includes himself.
Yeah.
And I can't go into backroom discussions, but if they don't agree, they don't agree. But that's the way it is. So George was very adamant about his opponents drug testing if they want to fight with him. And especially
presumably Anderson just wasn't on board with the same scrutiny as George.
Everybody has their demands, and that's one of George's demands, that his opponents test on. We wanted to pay out of pocket to have drug testing.
Yeah.
And he did, and he ended up doing it alone. Think about that. Yeah. If I was Johnny Hendricks, I would have done it out of principle. I can't let my opponent do it alone.
Yeah.
I have to test too. He's giving blood, hair. Like, they weren't taking hair, but it should be hair. In my opinion, it should be blood, hair, and urine. But anyways, I think you shouldn't cut your hair during training camp. You should keep a certain length, etc. But you shouldn't bleach your hair. You shouldn't do it. Like, that would be my ideal. Okay, hair and urine, blood and urine, I'll accept. I think that's good enough. We didn't. Both sides didn't agree. Let's leave it at that. But we're definitely on board at all times to do drug testing, blood and urine at all times.
So a guy like Anderson, like you mentioned, how you typically look at their training progression and their skill acquisition and their power throughout their career to kind of as a reflection of if they're suspect or not, rather than just do they have acne, do they have hair loss, do they have gynecomastia, etc. So for a guy like Anderson who was popped multiple times, like on the latter half of his career, rather than in his like pinnacle of smoking dudes in like dramatic fashion, do you think his progression is reflective of being on shit like the whole time, or what do you think for him?
You know what? I'll tell you something. I don't just go by physique. Physique is one factor.
Yeah.
If you put on 20 pounds of muscle in 1 year and you are already a developed athlete, I find that very suspect. I'm not saying he did that. I'm just saying that would be a flag for me. Okay. Because if you take a guy who's never trained a day in his life and you make him lose 10 pounds of fat and put on 20 pounds of muscle, but he had all that potential because the guy's never lifted anything heavier than a paperweight, and you got him deadlifting, for sure you could put on 20 pounds of muscle. Sure. If the guy's been wrestling and kickboxing since he's 10 years old, and now you tell me all of a sudden you put muscle on him like that, that's almost impossible. So musculature is one aspect. Now, I didn't think at that time that Anderson was on PEDs because he has receipts, man. I've seen this guy fight in Brazil. He was a gem. Okay, like, if you look at his early fights, in fights in Brazil, he's fighting in the ring with the like just killers, man. He was a gem. He was very quick. He had amazing eyes. He had the long reach. He was very creative in the ring. The guy was a gem. He was like a Muhammad Ali type of Muay Thai. He had a movement to him that was fluid. That has nothing to do with PEDs. Now, there was an infamous episode of MTV Cribs or something where they go to famous people's houses, and you should look this up because you'll find it, I'm sure. And they went to Anderson Silva's house, and there was like, he opened the cupboard and there was like these needles or something like that. And people like, you got to look it up. Okay, so just Google Cribs, Anderson Silva, PED, and you're gonna somebody's gonna highlight that picture. Now, when I was really I was like, nah, that's circumstantial. It could be something else. Maybe somebody in his family is diabetic. Who knows what that is? It
Yeah.
was just like such a, like, it went in the media. Everybody was talking about it. Now today, because the guy failed, I think two drug tests now, and now I would say, okay, it's very possible. Brazil has a PED culture. They do, all beach cultures. Anywhere where you go, there's a beach.
Yeah.
You're very often going to find steroids or performance enhancing drugs, like anything to make you rip and muscular. Why? Because you got to take your shirt off. It's a beach culture. Beach culture, you got to be ripped. If you want to go to the beach, you can't go there, chubby or whatnot. So oftentimes, anywhere you go, California, Florida, Brazil, all places which I love to visit, but you're going to see guys on gear. You're just going to see lots of it. You're going to see women on gear. So this is, I don't know if you know this, but Anavar was legal to buy in Brazil at the pharmacy.
Yeah.
This is like maybe 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't a banned substance. You can literally go buy it over the counter. So he might have grown up around it.
Yeah.
It's just like a normal thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you found what I was talking about. But that was the one thing that people were like, oh, look, he's taking PEDs. But because he had receipts, because he had such a long history of fighting, and you could see his progression was, he was very talented, and he has the fights to back it up.
Yeah.
So, but if you put PEDs on that, then you have a legend on your hands. Then you have a guy who's like doing something special in there,